Welcome to Forensic Friday,
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. Well, to paint you guys a picture, it is 10:15 on a Saturday night, and our executive producer is getting quite sleepy. But Nat and I are just getting warmed up.
Let's get started.
We are going to be talking about Von Miller. Vonnie is technically his name. Miller was born March 26, 1989 in DeSoto, Texas.
You know, I was doing some research on our buddy Vaughn, and I found some pretty good stuff on him.
Good stuff like he's done some good things?
Yes.
Well, that's important because I found some not so good things.
Well, that's also important.
You're telling me that people can do good things and bad things?
Yes.
And they're neither good nor bad?
Isn't that wild?
That is going to be the crux of a lot of our conversations.
I know.
So I think maybe what we should do is talk about his life story because he had a lot of stuff going on all at the same time.
He did. Yes, I'm going to share some of that. Jump in if you know some stuff that I don't know about his childhood or upbringing. As you mentioned, he is from Texas and he was raised by his two parents, and then he also has a little brother. It was noted that his family was really close growing up. He comes from two high school and college athletes. So both his parents were high school and college athletes.
And I think they're still together. I think his parents have always been together.
Yes, they're still together. They're a close-knit family from what I can find. Truthfully, yeah, he was very involved in sports. I actually have a little short fun story about him. So when he first wanted to do football, his dad wouldn't let him. And his mom and him came up with this plan for Vaughn to play football as a child and not tell their dad. And it
was a secret?
It was a secret.
Oh.
And he said in this article, he talked a little bit about my parents never lied to each other. They never kept secrets from each other. And so this was a really big deal that his
only football,
and that his mom was keeping the secret. So he would change in and out of his football gear in the car when he would leave the house and then before he'd get home. And it wasn't until after he won a championship with his team that he then told his dad, hey, we did this, because his dad didn't want him to play. Oh, and wow. He actually said Vaughn was too skinny to play.
Really?
Yes, like too little.
I had never heard that before.
Yes. So he got his career started in kind of a cute and fun way.
That is kind of cute.
Yeah. And so throughout his childhood, he played lots of sports and won different, I almost said certificates. What is that?
Nat, we don't get certificates in football.
What? But won a bunch of prizes and things that just really put him on the map for college football, and then for the Broncos, as we know him mostly from the Broncos now. I know he plays for the Bills, but
and as you know, I'm a giant football fan. So
I know.
I had to dig into some of the stats. So
absolutely.
When he was in high school at DeSoto High School in Dallas, he was the District 8 5A defensive MVP in their championship after he got 76 tackles, 14 for loss, and 6 sacks in one season, which is pretty intense.
Wow.
Even in high school. So even if he was the best person around, that is an awful lot of tackles.
That's wild.
Yep. So he was making a name for himself even in high school. And you know, Texas, Friday Night Lights, like they don't play down there.
No,
so
they don't.
He must have been an exceptional player to excel at that level, even in high school.
Yep.
Then he was a 4-star recruit. He had offers from Florida, LSU, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, but he finally decided on A&M. Go Aggies.
Go
Hey,
Aggies.
Lori.
Lori, we love you.
Lori is a massive Aggie fan, so we always root for the Aggies for our buddy Lori. He played for Texas A&M from 2007 to 2010. His college career is kind of interesting because this is the first time that we see things go awry a little bit for him. So in 2007, he was a freshman all Big 12.
Yep.
Which is a big deal. So again, he goes from high school being a standout to his first year of college. And A&M is no joke. That's a big school with a really
Huge.
storied football program.
Yeah.
In 2008, there was a new coach, Mike Sherman, and he was disappointed in Miller's habit of skipping practice and failing to produce during practice.
I saw that.
So basically, Von Miller considered transferring, but his father insisted that he stay, and that kind of made Miller refocus and fix his attitude a little bit.
That's awesome.
2009, he had a breakout season. He was willing to switch positions. I think it's actually really cool, and shows a lot of resilience that he stuck it out, tried some different positions, and then by 2010, he was an All-American, and he won the Butkus Award, which I'm a Bears fan, so that's especially special to me.
That's awesome.
For being the nation's top linebacker. Now, also in 2011, he graduated from A&M with what, Nat?
A poultry science degree.
So what do you do with a poultry science degree,
You
Nat?
open a chicken farm in Texas.
This man loves his chicken. I did not know this about Von Miller.
He literally has a chicken farm.
He loves it.
And he studied poultry science.
Obsessed with chickens. I didn't know that was a thing.
I would have never guessed.
A&M is an agriculture school, though, so I guess that makes sense.
That's fair.
Yeah, and he just has a whole bunch of chickens, and he's, living his best life with his chickens, I guess. Right? Now, also in 2011, he had a positive drug test for THC and amphetamines, and they're pretty certain that was from the club drug Molly. And so we'll get more into drugs another day, but that is,
That's no joke.
it's kind of no joke. And this was before the draft. So he even had a little bit of an issue right when he's going into the NFL. So you can see in college, he had this amazing career, really played very, very well. But we were starting to see some tendencies towards some interesting behavior.
All right, Janine, give me the good stuff.
The good stuff?
Give me the good stuff.
Okay.
Let's dive in.
Okay.
We went through his childhood. He's done a lot of good.
Yes.
I'll dive into some other good that he's done as an adult as we go.
I'll run you through it.
Let's dive in.
Jump ahead to the NFL draft. So at this point, Von Miller is 6 feet, 2 5/8 inches. It's always funny to me in the draft. Have you ever seen them out in their undies and they get measured in front of everybody, which is horrifying as a female?
No, I have not seen this. I feel like that's one of my nightmares that I have.
100%. There is not a female in the world that would do this, but they go up there in their undies. Look up Tom Brady for a good laugh. They go up there in their undies and they measure them in front of everyone and weigh them in front of everyone because, guys lie about all kinds of things, height being one of them, right?
Yeah, maybe some other things.
Maybe some other things, but definitely height. So they measure people. They measure these players in front of everybody to verify their size. So he was drafted number 2 overall in the draft by the Broncos. John Elway had just become the executive vice president of football operations, and he loved Von Miller. Now, he gets drafted.
Okay.
I'm sure he is pumped.
Obviously.
Broncos Nation is so excited.
Stoked.
John Elway is so excited. Also around this time, an acquaintance of Von Miller, acquaintance/friend, from what I was able to read.
Okay.
His name was Dexter Lewis.
Okay.
Well, Dexter Lewis and Joseph and Linnell Hill allegedly stabbed 5 people to death after stealing $170 from a bar, and then they burned it down.
What?
And this was big news. I actually kind of remember this. And it was a really big deal.
And this was in 2012?
In 2012.
Okay.
This happened. But nobody knew.
Okay.
Nobody knew in 2012 that this was an acquaintance of Von Miller's.
Okay.
But this comes to surface later.
Okay.
So just tuck that away.
What's fascinating, though, in 2012, also, Von Miller opened his own nonprofit.
Oh, right at the same time.
Yes. Well, I mean, at least in 2012. And it's called Von's Vision. So it's a nonprofit that's designed to provide eye care for children in need. So the whole thing was for kids to get things like glasses, contacts, even as far as LASIK surgery.
Oh, wow.
Help them with their vision because he had, according to what I researched, not great vision.
Oh, interesting. I never heard that about
So
it.
it's just fascinating to me that all this was happening all in the
Hmm.
same year, because that's what I looked up was that he had this nonprofit for kids.
He does typically wear glasses, even now as I'm picturing him.
Yes.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so there's some good.
There's
Way to
some
go, Von
good.
Miller, helping kids with the glasses and
I
stuff. That's great.
know.
We
Well,
love to see it.
it goes back to what you said though, like how we can have these two worlds exist together. They can
Mm-hmm.
coexist. Like this advocacy for wanting to do better, wanting to, give people maybe something that he knows that people need and maybe he needed, but then also living this other type of life.
We think.
We
Now,
think.
with Von Miller, there's no evidence to tie him to this crime at all. So
Right.
he's never been implicated in the crime.
Okay.
The thing that's interesting about it, though, is just that it was an acquaintance of his
Okay.
for sure that was involved in this. And that comes up later in his timeline.
Hmm.
So people found out later down the road that Von Miller was an acquaintance/friend
Okay.
of one of these men.
Okay.
So he may not have known this happened. I mean, we didn't know who this was until the court case, but it does beg the question if he was spending time with this person around that time, which we know that he was.
Mm-hmm.
It does sort of beg the question, what were they up to and who are these people?
Right.
Right?
Right.
But, he launched a nonprofit at the same time.
He did. And I mean, it was a big thing. That's interesting because so he actually partnered with a company called Ubisoft, and they are makers of the video game The Hip Hop Dance Experience, to create his own sax celebration dance called, I might butcher this, DeSoto Shuffle. I think I got that.
You got
DeSoto
that.
Shuffle.
DeSoto Shuffle.
DeSoto Shuffle. And it was inspired by the video game. So each time he performed the dance during the game, Ubisoft made a charitable donation to Von's Vision, which is his nonprofit to help kids.
Well, that's pretty cool. And I remember he had some pretty killer dance moves.
Yes.
That I do remember.
I do too. Yep.
He could kind of get down in the end zone.
And I mean, I love dancing. So I'm
I
like
know
all
you
for
do.
that.
I know you do. So, he's doing all these good works, which I, of course, appreciate. I think we should help
Yes.
children
Yeah.
any way we can. Anyway,
Of course.
he also was then suspended for 4 games for violating the league substance abuse policy. He appealed that right away, but right before he was set to plead his case in front of the NFL to see if they could appeal the 4-game suspension, he was arrested at Centennial Gun Club, which I've been to.
Oh, shoot. Same.
Same. But he had an active warrant after he skipped a court date for basically a failure to appear.
Yep.
So he didn't show up for court.
That'll
You see
get
that
you.
all the time. FDA, don't do it.
Yeah.
So he didn't show up when there was a court case, a court hearing for driving related charges that happened in October of 2012. And then again, after he was arrested in August of 2013, he was cited in September of 2013 for speeding and driving with a suspended license in Arapahoe County.
That'll also get you.
These are the things that we see every day.
All the time.
All the time. Criminal history.
Yeah.
We see a lot of the FTA, people just not handling their business.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, these arrests don't show up, so that's fascinating.
That is fascinating.
I'm thinking maybe he paid a fair bit of money to get some of that stuff sealed, but we will never know for sure.
No.
But there is 0 criminal history in Colorado. So we don't know for sure that these events had an influence on what happened with the NFL, but he lost that appeal. He lost that appeal and was actually suspended 6 games.
Okay.
After the NFL learned that he tried to cheat on his drug tests. And he tried some of the classics, Nat. Like he spilled.
A Wizinator?
Not a Wizinator. Not a Wizinator. Wizinator's real special, guys. He did not try Wizinator.
Don't look it up.
He spilled, in quotes, one of the urine specimens, which is gross and also, come on.
Yeah.
The guy like runs with a football. He's fine. He can hold a cup of pee.
You
like
can
for real.
catch a football, you can hold your cup of
Absolutely.
tea.
And then he had a dilute test, because he's overly hydrated, which
Yeah.
don't even get me started. Maybe we'll do a whole podcast on dilute drug tests.
I think that would be helpful.
I can't. Maybe we'll call up Century. We'll have them come on down and
Yes.
do a little interview with us about dilute drug tests.
Quick side note. If you have to do UAs,
Yes.
my people,
Do it.
Just
Public
do
service
it.
announcement.
Just do it. Take a protein bar with you.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be fine.
Take your test, people. And honestly, it's better to have a hot test than a dilute. The dilute's just irritating.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
Yeah.
And don't ask your therapist if you're going to have a positive test or not. You should know.
Yeah.
You should know.
They know.
Right? Okay. Soapbox. So I wanted to read his statement at the time when he got suspended because I thought this was very interesting. Here's what Von Miller had to say. The substances of abuse policy requires everyone to comply with the rules. Although my suspension doesn't result from a positive test, right, because, spillage, there's no excuse for my violations of the rules. I made mistakes and my suspension has hurt my team, Broncos fans, and myself. I'm especially sorry for the effect of my bad decisions on others. I will not make the same mistakes about adhering to the policy in the future. During my time off the field, I will work tirelessly and focus exclusively on remaining in peak shape. I look forward to contributing immediately upon my return to the field and bringing a championship back to the people of Denver.
I have some thoughts.
I have thoughts too. Lay them on me.
So I love the second part of that whole thing because it's acknowledging that he maybe disappointed people that he cares about. However, this is like right in line with what we hear.
All the time.
All the time. Although, so I'm gonna even look. I have what you said right here in front of me. Although my suspension doesn't result from a positive test, that in itself is just minimization.
And if there's no excuse for my violation of the rules, take accountability that you were using the substance in the first place. You didn't spill. Von Miller.
Just own it, my friend.
You caused fumbles.
Just own it.
That would be good.
Own our behaviors.
I see the empathy, though. There is kind of empathy that he disappointed his team, the fans, and himself.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So then he did a little bit more good. Fill us in.
Apparently after he did that, because I didn't look up any of that stuff. I just looked up all the good. In 2013, he went to go visit some soldiers in the Middle East and play touch football with them. He was involved in a lot of local charities and activities in the greater Denver area. So the cool thing about him, and I did some of the research that I did was him with a lot of kids. Yeah. So I do think he has a passion to like help kids do well. And, as his nonprofit is like be able to see and to be able to work hard and do their things. There's a bunch of different pictures and articles just talking about him connecting with kids around football and sports. And then he went into the Middle East. And from what I read, this could be wrong, so hear me say that. I think it was kind of like a really last minute trip for him to go visit some of those soldiers, which is really cool.
That is really cool.
And for him to just go be a human with them. And so it's just hard. Like, again, going back to what you said at the beginning, both can exist, right? Like this like dark side of us, this shadow side, and then also this side of us that really actually wants to do well and advocate and help people.
Well, and it's interesting, Nat, because I can see how somebody might make a mistake.
Yes.
With drug testing. He's still young. I mean, this is the thing, right? Like these people, they finish college, they go right into the pros, they have all this money, there's all these people around. I can really see how somebody might smoke a little weed. The Molly, is a little bit intense, but like whatever, he's got had a little bit of a mistake, whatever. But then
he's not the first one to do it.
Exactly. But you do kind of see this improvement in his football pretty quickly after that. And I wonder, again, we don't know. Natalie and I don't know him. We've never counseled him. We don't know anyone who knows him. So this is all speculation. But what you can see is he got his first Pro Bowl nomination in 2014, which is a really big deal.
That's awesome.
And then in 2015, this is the thing that Broncos Nation will know. This is the hometown hero part. He broke records and won Super Bowl 50 with our Denver Broncos.
Nice.
And so I went back.
I remember that.
I know. I went back and I kind of refreshed my memory. So the Carolina Panthers were highly favored to win. And I sort of remember that we were underdogs, but I didn't remember all the pieces to it.
Right.
He had 6 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 quarterback hurries in just one game.
Wow.
That has actually never happened before.
That's wild.
So he was the Super Bowl MVP, which is incredible. And some people have said this is one of the greatest individual defensive performances in Super Bowl history.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So he didn't just Super Bowl, like he Super Bowled to the max.
Right. I have a potentially really stupid question that our Denver people also, side note, both Jenny, well, no, you're not. You're not a native to Colorado.
I'm not a native. I'm almost a native.
She's almost a native. I'm a native to Colorado, so I am sorry to my Colorado people.
They're going to be so disappointed.
They are going to be with this next question. This was after the Seahawks, Seattle Seahawks and Denver played, right? I think that was maybe 2014. Is that
I don't
correct?
know. I would have to look it up. I'm
Okay.
a terrible Denver Broncos fan.
Oh, shoot.
I know. I'm not consistent enough with it. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I'm just curious because I was actually living in Seattle when the Broncos lost to the Seahawks, and it was devastating. And I'm pretty sure it's
I think that
2014.
might have been the next year. We can put it in maybe we'll have like a fact checker at the end and we'll figure out what we butchered and what we missed.
Or at the beginning of our next one. I'll let all my Denver people know that I figured it out.
There you go.
Anyway,
we'll do our
moving
research. So he wins the Super Bowl with the Broncos. We're all ecstatic. And gets placed on the witness list for Dexter Lewis for his trial for the murder of those 5 people and the robbery.
Wow.
The bar.
So that showed up years later.
It showed up years later.
Okay.
Happened in 2012, and then he was listed on the witness list.
Okay.
As an acquaintance of Dexter Lewis, and what he would have been called to testify about was where he was leading up to the robbery and the murders, and also attire. So I don't know if it was the attire that day, like what he was wearing that day, but the impression I get is that Von Miller had seen him, or at least the courts believed he had seen him.
Okay.
Again, not that Von Miller was ever a person of interest or was involved in the crime, but he was close enough in with this Dexter Lewis person that he was on the official witness list.
Okay.
It is important to note there were over 100 people on the witness list, so it's not like he was, number 1 on the witness list, but he was on the list. Dexter Lewis was ultimately found guilty and sentenced to life without parole plus 180 years after the jury rejected the death sentence. But the death sentence was on the table. So it made news that Von Miller might have had to testify in a death row case the same year as Super Bowl 50 when he was the MVP.
Wow.
So it's so crazy how things come together. And so the newspapers at the time, and there's several Denver Post articles, and it was kind of big news locally.
Yeah.
It was just such a juxtaposition of this highest high in your career, and then also
having all
being
of this
associated with someone who, could potentially have done this really heinous thing.
Yes. Wow.
So after Super Bowl 50, the Broncos decide he's our man. He's going to be our franchise player, and he became the highest paid defensive player in the NFL.
Dang. Do we know how much he made?
I put down how much he made. Because, those are the only numbers I like.
Right.
I don't like math, but, when you're talking about millions of dollars, even I'll do math.
Yeah, I want to know.
It was a 6-year, $114.5 million deal with a $70 million guarantee, which is really high, from the Broncos. 2017 to 2021, he continued to play at a Pro Bowl caliber until the Broncos exercised their option and traded him to the LA Rams in exchange for the 2nd and 3rd draft round picks. And this was sad. I mean, I just remember I have family members who are diehard Bronco fans, and they were so sad to lose Von Miller. And he was sad, and he said he was a Bronco forever. During that time, too, in between those years of 2017 and 2021, in 2018, he illegally landed and improperly caught and released a hammerhead shark while on a guided fishing tour in Florida.
How the actual
I know.
heck do you do that?
I am and a hammerhead. So illegally landing, I'm guessing that means they weren't supposed to be where they were, or maybe they weren't supposed to get off the boat where they did.
I don't know.
It looks like he released the hammerhead. So
Well,
there's that. But I don't know how you properly release a hammerhead shark.
I just don't. Okay, continue.
Yeah, okay. So those rules were not important at that time.
Wild.
He and his now ex-girlfriend, Megan Denise, first met at the ESPY Awards in 2019. The other thing that's really important to kind of mention in here, 2021 was kind of an interesting year for Von Miller. So he went on to help the Rams win a Super Bowl.
Okay, fascinating.
So he won the Super Bowl in 2015 with the Broncos. He was traded in 2021 from the Broncos to the Rams. That same year, he helped them win a Super Bowl.
Okay.
He's only the second player ever in history to have multiple Super Bowl games with multiple sacks. So he was a big impact defensive player in 2 different Super Bowls with 2 different teams. So that's pretty incredible.
That is.
There was a little controversy in 2021 because he was accused of assaulting his girlfriend at that time. This was big news in the Denver domestic violence world because everybody was wondering who's going to get to counsel Von Miller.
Yes, I remember this.
Not that we ever would have talked about this, but Natalie and I were working in this area.
Yep.
And so this was kind of a hot topic. I wonder if he would do private therapy. Would he be forced to do what anyone else would have to do in this situation?
Well, we had friends. I remember I had some friends ask me, "Hey, Nat, are you gonna do Von Miller's DV treatment?" And I was like, I had no idea.
First of all, I can't tell you.
Right.
And even
also,
if I did. But second of all, no.
And
no, I will not be Von Miller's DV therapist.
But it's wild that people just knew, like, based on what was going on in the media, that he might be having to do that.
And I mean, there were things that were said. There was a Denver Post article that talked about extensive, that was in quotes, extensive allegations that were turned over to the DA in Douglas County. And Douglas County, I mean, that's a county we've worked in for years.
Yeah.
We know the probation officers down there.
I love our POs there.
We do too. We love them. But this was big news, and they even cited his arrest in 2013. Remember, this background check doesn't have any arrests.
Right.
But the Denver Post article talks about previous arrests.
Which is wild.
And so also around that time, later that same year, his son with Megan Denise was born. His son Valor was born in August of that year. In March of that year, so the allegations happen in like February. In March, the DA's office came to the conclusion that the evidence produced didn't meet the minimum requirements for filing and maintaining criminal charges. So basically, they just didn't have enough information to get a conviction. And also they talked about just privacy and trying to respect his privacy because it was such big news.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what happened with that charge and that case. It went away.
Okay. That's wild that it just like disappeared.
It just disappeared, which I don't know about you, but my experience with Douglas County is that's not terribly common.
No.
And they're actually a pretty well-educated county when it comes to domestic violence. So we can't speak to what happened. We'll never know what actually happened, but it's interesting that they came out with such extensive allegations and then it was dropped.
Yeah.
So we'll never know. Then he signed with the Buffalo Bills for a 6-year, $120 million deal, but then he was injured and placed on injured reserve.
Okay. Well, do you know his injury?
I want to say it was an ankle injury, ankle or foot.
Okay.
But again, we might have to do some fact checking and
put it
on the website later. And also we'll cite some of these sources as well, so you guys can look at them. Then his second son, named Victory, was born in February of 2023. This is where his case takes a turn, and this is the stuff that you and I have not talked about yet. So
okay.
We're going to get your hot takes, Natalie, on this.
Let's go.
Okay. So Megan Denise, which was his girlfriend, they had been together for 7 years. And, they had their children together, as we've talked about. On November 29th, 2023, Von Miller allegedly assaulted his girlfriend, and it was reported to police on November 30th of 2023, and it was a felony assault. And here's what we know from the police report. Von Miller asked her to get out, and when she tried to get her laptop and her cell phone, he started pushing her. She was yelling, "Stop, I'm pregnant." She fell into a chair after being pushed, and Von Miller put one hand on her neck and held it with pressure for 3 to 5 seconds. That's from the police report.
Okay.
According to the police document, Miller threw the woman's laptop on the floor and stomped on it. After pulling out some of her hair and throwing her on a couch, he put both hands on her neck. She told police she recorded some of the attack, and when she threatened to call police, he left. And again, we see that quite a bit.
Yes, we do.
Unfortunately. And we'll get into some other pieces with the strangulation aspect of this.
Yeah.
The woman told police she was 6 weeks pregnant and showed them a photograph of a positive pregnancy test and a screenshot of a text conversation with Miller in which they discussed the possible due date of the child and a doctor visit, meaning he knew.
He knew she was pregnant.
He knew she was pregnant.
Before this alleged thing happened.
And that's really significant, as you know, on the risk assessment that we do in evaluations, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Police were able to observe injuries. Now, this is really important because when there's a report and, you know, maybe there's a victim statement, there's some he said, she said.
Yes.
One of the things you and I rely on a lot is, what did the police see? What's the physical evidence?
Yes.
Are there marks? What story does the scene and the injuries set?
Yeah. Do they match?
Do they match?
Yeah.
So police observed, and she was treated for minor injuries, including abrasions on her left hand, bruises on her neck, abdomen, and left bicep. These injuries were consistent with applied pressure to the neck. And this is important also, as you and I, we've done some extensive training around strangulation. And this is something that if I saw this in a police report, that's strangulation.
Oh, absolutely.
Straight up.
Absolutely.
And so again, we're not there. We can't say definitively what happened.
However, if a police report shows it, it's there. It happened.
It's there. And one of the things, Natalie, you and I know is a lot of times when somebody puts their hands on somebody's neck, it doesn't leave marks.
Yeah.
So the fact that there were marks, there was some significant force involved.
Yeah.
So that's really important. And what we know from the research, and the Domestic Violence Offender Management Board really took this into consideration, when we have strangulation in an offense, the risk of femicide goes up exponentially, both in the offense and in future offenses.
Yeah.
And so we have to take that into account, that if someone has been strangled, I always tell my clients it's the ultimate power and control move. I decide whether you breathe or not.
Yeah. Well, and it is the step before homicide.
It is the step before homicide. It's probably our absolute closest step to homicide. Yes. And so for that reason, the Domestic Violence Offender Management Board has recommended, post-publishing of the DBRNA, that be an automatic override to level C. So we're going to get into the scoring of the DBRNA in a future episode. We didn't want to start there. We're going to build up to there. But basically, an automatic level C just means that the risk level is upgraded based on that aspect of the crime.
Yes, because it is that dangerous.
Absolutely. And, you know, stay tuned in the future. We'll talk about why strangulation is also not sexy at all. Strangulation is not sexy. No. Put it on a t-shirt. We will cover that in a future session. Interestingly, the Buffalo Bills did not release him. They called these allegations out of his character.
Wow.
Yes.
Janine, I'm going to just be super transparent with my feelings.
Yes.
I am so disappointed.
It is so disappointing.
That's so disappointing. And again, we have worked with men who've made really significant mistakes.
Absolutely.
And women.
Oh, yeah.
but specifically men, because we're talking about a man right now. But that's so disappointing. I have seen people who have been arrested for domestic violence for nothing physical and lost their jobs, lost their careers, lost their families, lost so much. And so for Von Miller, for this to be, again, an alleged thing, however, the police report's there.
Police report's there.
So it shows us that something probably most likely happened.
Yes.
And he doesn't lose anything.
Yes.
Nothing. That is so crazy.
Nothing. And the team actually backed him up, which is fine. You know, the NFL has even in the last 2 years, made some adjustments.
Yes, I do know that.
They've had to.
Yep.
Unfortunately, because DV's rampant and worse post-COVID.
Yeah.
Which is something we're going to talk about a bit. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take all of this information that we've been kind of downloading with you guys, and we're going to talk about what it would look like if Von Miller strolled into our office for an assessment.
I love this idea.
What treatment would we encourage him to participate in? What are some of the barriers we might identify? Right?
Love that.
We are going to discuss that after a short break. If you or someone you know is struggling in a domestic violence relationship, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or text BEGIN to 88788. So now when you think about Von Miller in your treatment group, in your office for an evaluation, walking around the halls, waiting in the waiting room, as you're reflecting on his case, right, which is what we do, what do you think is driving this behavior? Because we have this picture of kind of a great childhood, parents are together, neighborhood kids would be hanging out at the Miller's house, right? All this success, all this discipline that he developed over the years in his football. What in the world is going on with Von Miller?
That is such a good question. It goes back to a little of something you said earlier. Success at such a young age, I think that can be a big driving force for a lot of athletes, to be honest with you. And we'll get into some of that as our podcast goes. But I think, substance use and abuse and addiction runs pretty rampant in some of the sports world. And then also, surrounding yourself with people who get in trouble, who don't like to follow the rules. It's easy to get wrapped up in the wrong crowd.
It really is. And I'm also sitting here thinking about brain injuries and CTE and, just some of the things that we've begun to pay more attention to in domestic violence. And especially in a football player, just knowing that when we have any kind of damage from repeated blows to the head, and again, we know nothing. We've never looked at his medical chart. We don't know anything. But I'm speculating he's probably had a concussion or two. It'd be weird if he didn't. The importance of taking into account brain health with him as well. And then also being in a relationship with someone who's also young, who's also caught up in this rat race. Pretty interesting to think about what that relationship might have looked like. And we don't know anything about her, but I wonder what kind of expectations were on her and on him as they're trying to navigate life with young children in the NFL. Post 2 Super Bowls.
A lot of
Probably
stress.
a lot going on.
A lot of stress. This gets back to kind of what we said at the very beginning, right? This is where the heart is integrated into this, where these people are real people. And like you said before, there's a very small amount of humans that are actual sociopaths and who really don't have the capacity to feel. And if I had to go out on a whim here and guess if Von Miller is one of those people, he's not. He really cared for kids. He's close with his family. He has 2 children of his own. And so that's where this heart piece comes into it of knowing that these people are real human beings.
Real and under pressure and sitting in the tension of all of it being true.
Yes. And they need some help too. Just
Absolutely.
because he's high up there and a professional
Yep.
football player
Uh-huh.
doesn't mean that he doesn't need the help.
That's exactly right. And, you know, when I think about how lonely it must be
Yeah.
to be in an upper echelon like that, which I'll never know,
No.
you know.
I mean, maybe.
I don't know. We'll see where the podcast
You know, Peloton
goes. Here we
earlier,
go. I
you know.
know, right? But I just think it's interesting to think about what it must be like for people to have that much power
Yeah.
and still not be able to control everything.
Yeah.
And to be that successful, but also have made mistakes that are on such a grand scale. I've made a million mistakes. I've never been in a newspaper over it, knock on wood.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I suppose there's still time, but it hasn't happened yet. That would be really difficult.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. The more I think about his history and his timeline, I hope he's gotten some help.
Yeah.
Because I think we would agree, you'll have to tell me, without intervention, the patterns in the relationship are very unlikely to change.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And I think that's why Colorado does such. This is not what some of our people would say or agree with.
Some of our clients would really disagree.
Yes, but that is one of the reasons why I really do like how Colorado in particular has really leaned into the DV laws, the domestic violence laws, but then also how we do treatment. Treatment is no joke. It is 9 months to a year, maybe more.
Maybe more.
It's all based on progress. And so how you and I have both seen very few individuals not be successful in that, but we've seen so many people be successful in that and not repeat their offenses. And it is because they did the work.
They did the work. And Colorado, even though it's a big net, what I tell our clients is it's a bigger net than some states, which means it catches more people up in the system, which is hard.
Yeah.
And occasionally even seems unfair.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of deferred judgments. And so people have an opportunity to complete treatment and have the offense removed from their records.
Yeah.
So I think there are opportunities to course correct in Colorado, which I love.
Yes.
But they have to make a choice to engage in treatment. And I really wish and I really hope that Von Miller actually gets domestic violence treatment, because
I do too.
Based on the injuries alone,
pretty significant.
They were significant enough that I would hope that they would have some intervention in the family.
Yes.
But again, we don't know. So Von Miller, if you're listening, we love you. We want you to do well, and go find a DV therapist, stat.
Yeah.
You never know. You might just learn something that could be helpful for the future.
Yeah.
I just want to revisit the fact that we talked about crime, right? We talked about Von Miller's life, his amazing successes, and also his legal system involvement and some of the concerns around that for him and his family, the psychological drivers and how we would assess him and make recommendations for treatment, and then also the heart of the matter, which is Von Miller is an exceptional athlete coming from a family where, by all accounts, there was an awful lot of love. He has young children, and he's trying to make his way in the world just like we are.
Yeah.
And so while we hope he gets the treatment that he needs, the things that he's done does not define who he is as a person.
Could not be more true.
Yep. And we would have expected an awful lot of accountability had he shown up in one of our domestic violence groups.
Yes. I bet we would have liked him as a client.
I think he would have been a good client. I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening, and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.